Roll call, please.
Carlson,
Here.
Maniscalco, Dingfelder, Citro,
Here.
Vieira, Miranda,
Here.
and Goods.
Here.
We have a physical quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll go to item number 7.
Good afternoon, Council. This is Dennis Guerrero, Chief Financial Officer. Thank you for allowing me to present. Ms. Lucas, ma'am, if you could share my screen. Can everyone see my presentation?
Hasn't come up yet. We're
No.
waiting on it.
All right.
There.
Let me know.
We got you. All right.
You would? Well, that's the important part.
We got a small welcome screen at the top of the page. It is.
Here we are.
All right.
Not-
We got it.
Nothing yet?
We got it, sir.
You have it.
We have it. Yes, sir.
Outstanding. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to start off by just giving a quick refresh of last year's PIPES debt issuance. The mayor and city council, of course, as you'll recall, approved what we still think is a very well-crafted infrastructure program. And you'll also recall that it was planned to be implemented via these funding sources you see here. More planned debt issuances through 2024, the planned use of fund balance, and a corresponding multi-year rate structure. That's the structure that was approved last year. And that rate structure was done, as you can see here, to enhance the financial viability of that program. We wanted to make sure, mayor wanted to make sure, council wanted to make sure that the revenues are going to be there years from now as we complete these planned projects. The initial debt, you'll recall, was $360 million, and it was based on that PIPES program. That's why we did it. It was sized to take advantage of the current economic environment at the time, the low interest rates. It captured savings by refinancing existing debt. It set strong debt service coverages and was planned to result in the buildup of and eventual reduction of significant fund balance totals. All of these combined led to those very high and upgraded credit ratings that we've talked about. As you know, the city's water and wastewater system remains one of only 2 systems in Florida with the highest rating from each credit agency. I'd, of course, be remiss if I didn't say much of that credit also belongs to the world-class teams we've got running those systems. Moving on to fund balance. First, of course, we appreciate city council's continuing emphasis on strong fund balances across our city's fund structure. The water department's fund balance was strong prior to the PIPES debt, and that was by design for the reasons you see here. The city's experience with the Great Recession, the drought that pretty much coincided with that period, and the continued deterioration of pipelines. Again, one of the reasons we started the PIPES programs in the first place. So they started out strong. And after the PIPES debt issuance, they remained strong. And again, that's planned. As you can see here on item A, planned use of significant accumulated fund balance for the PIPES projects, all part of the plan. Again, the excellent debt service coverages that helped our ratings and saved us money. And of course, we want a fund balance for the non-PAYGO projects, for those items that come up that are outside the PIPES program. The whole world's not just pipes. And changing future conditions. It's a reasonable and sound practice to keep a basket of funding available for those things that come up and those things that change in the future. I'll give you an example. With the rebounding economy we're seeing right now and the pressure on design firms, construction contractors, and cost increases, we're already seeing significant cost changes to our projects. You see here over the next 2 slides our anticipated use of fund balance for the projects. Over half of the project funding next year, for example, That large orange section is going to go for pipes projects, nearly $70 million in the next fiscal year. You see the gray is the debt service and the blue is the PAYGO. I'll give you the specific numbers highlighted in yellow. You can see we started eating into our fund balance this year, but again, we're going to hit it for $70 million in the next fiscal year. Moving on to potential savings and refinancings. When City Council approved the pipes debt of nearly $360 million, almost a quarter of that, or about $90 million, was to refinance existing debt, all without extending that debt, taking advantage, again, of those very low rates. Doing so, you see here, achieved savings of over $14 million in present value. Additionally, and even bigger, while we issued that debt, we received almost $440 million in cash, or a premium, what they call a premium, of $79 million. Why'd we get the premium? Very strong interest in our bonds, strong demand based on that it being a secured investment tied to that multi-year rate structure. It gave the market, it gave investors a great deal of security, and it was a very competitive issuance. All told, you see at the bottom right there, approximately $93 million in funding. Now, I say all this and I refresh this to say that these savings and refinancing opportunities have pretty much been accomplished right now. There may come a time in the future where refinancing opportunities present themselves, and of course, we'll bring those to council, but not at this time. Council may also recall we upsized the debt, again, to take advantage of those economic conditions that were in the market. We went big right out of the gate. Doing this didn't eliminate the need for fund balance or the need for PAYGO projects. It just front-loaded our cash position so we could make these expenditures over time. Moving on to potential reduction of rates. Candidly, given what the city has planned to do over the next decades, the anticipated revenues for this plan, as you can see here, meet the anticipated expenses and coverage requirements for the program. If you reduce the planned revenues, you're going to have to reduce the planned uses, be it fund balance or projects. Besides the current and anticipated debt obligations associated with that multi-year rate structure, reducing rates now, we project, will have an adverse impact on those key financial metrics, the fund balance, the reserves, and the debt coverage you see here. And by reducing the fund balance, we'll reduce our available funding to do those needed PAYGO projects. I'll note Tampa still retains one of the lowest water rates of our comparable cities and counties and far lower than the average, as you see here. City of Tampa in bold towards the top, the survey average at the bottom, and our comparable jurisdictions. In summary, Council, the PIPES program remains on course. Our recommendation is that we stay the course. Of course, as I've mentioned, as you know, a decades-long, nearly $3 billion program is going to change over time, and it's going to be impacted, both good and bad, by any number of things. The overall economy, interest rates, inflation, cost changes, some of these that we've already discussed, and some just waiting around the corner. All I can tell you for certain, of course, is that circumstances will change. And as time goes by, our finance professionals, our legal professionals, our systems professionals, both inside the city and outside the city, we're going to monitor those things. We're going to monitor the economy. We're going to monitor the city's finances. And that's when we'll bring to council a recommendation to change the plan. That concludes my presentation. I can answer any questions you have.
Any questions, gentlemen? Ms. Carlson, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you for going through that.
Yes, sir.
You know, I mentioned earlier today that there are still members of the public who are very upset about the rate increase because they felt like they weren't informed about it in advance, that despite whatever communication the city did, they didn't know. And I think it's a large percentage of people who were surprised by it, shocked by it. But there's concern in the community that there was a slush fund, and you showed one just now. And one of the things I think you didn't show was one of the concerns of the community is that this money is being used to offset some other projects, either toilet to tap, which the community doesn't want, or the existing budget of the water department, and using kind of like the lottery money. So you get the lottery money and you say that you're going to use it to support education, but then you reduce the education budget or you use it on something else. So I think what the constituents are asking us to do is to be fiscally prudent. If we're going to keep the rates where they are, I wish there was a way to reduce them, but if we, and it looks like there is, by the way, I mean, I'd like to get bond counsel in to talk to us about what that margin is. You know, we're not rating the reserve funds like the last administration did. We're just trying to be prudent about how much we keep. And if there's if there's a savings with the rest of the water budget, then I think we need to be transparent about that with the public. And in particular, this council took out the toilet tap project, and so I'm hoping that we don't find out through any forensic accounting that any money from this has been used on that. Any feedback on that? With the allegation that many people in the community have said is this is like the lottery money, where we're offsetting some existing water costs, and we should therefore overall reduce the water rate, maybe not connected to these bonds.
Yes, sir. No, thank you. I appreciate that. We discussed some of that previously. Again, I'll cast it in pre-pipes debt and post-pipes debt. Even setting aside the pipes debt and its contribution to the fund balance, by design, we have strong fund balances and strive to have strong fund balances in all of our enterprise funds. From a water fund perspective, for the reasons I've gone over, you want a strong fund balance, but that was the part I was referencing about non-pipes projects, for instance. It would be up to the mayor and city council to spend a portion of the fund balance, for example, on the Pure project, on the TAP project, et cetera. If you forayed into the pipes funding, you'd have to reduce some pipes projects or the fund balance, again, adversely impacting those debt service coverages if you wanted to fund something outside of the pipes program with pipes money. So we have a very strong fund balance, and that's by design.
Could I just say,
sorry.
when we went out to the community, we told them that the what you call Pure, I call toilet to tap project was not included, and had they known that, they wouldn't have. They probably would have protested at a larger extent. And my understanding by taking it out is that we'd have to go back to the community for a rate case. If that's changed, and we now have enough money to do the toilet to tap project, I suggest that we today propose a rate reduction. Because a rate increase gives us transparency. We just heard the proposal; it's between $2.5 and $7 billion for that project, and whatever form it takes. And I think we don't need it. And so if we have the money to do it, I think that's an extra layer that we should go to the public and say, do you want to pay for it? Do you want that extra $10 or $20 a month rate increase because of that? Or if we're not going to use that money, can we reduce their rate by several dollars a month? Thanks.
And if I may, if I can clarify, I think your point was, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think your point was if we're going to use, if we're going to fund the pipes program, it will require a rate study. It absolutely will. If you're going to do the Pure program or the toilet to tap, whatever you want to call it, if you're going to do a program outside of the pipes program, of that magnitude, a 300 million-ish program, you'll have to do a rate study, and you'll have to have a rate increase. If the mayor and if council, and I think this was your other point, but I don't want to speak for you, were to use PIPES funding for a pure program, you'd have to reduce PIPES project. You simply can't do a $350 million program without raising rates and doing a rate study, just as you said.
So just to put a cap on it, besides the other public engagement, to ask the public what they think about those projects, to raise the rates, we have to go to the public and get their input again, right?
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, council. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll go to item number 8.
Good afternoon, Council. Osea Wynn, Administrator of Neighborhood and Community Affairs. If it serves to pleasure the council, I would like to discuss items both 8 and 9 at the same time. Items 8 is to provide an update on the recommendations from our previous presentation before you, and item 9 is to provide an update on the EBO portion of the PIPES program.
If there are no objections, gentlemen, 8 and 9 together, no objections? All right,
Okay.
you may proceed.
Thank you. Presentation, please.
IT, can we pull up the presentation?
Okay, thank you so much. Next slide, please. So when we came before you, before council, we discussed with you the issues and some of the concerns that were brought to us by not only you, but also some of your constituents, and some of the things that we realized as well in terms of those barriers, those things that were preventing us from realizing the ready, willing, and able contractors of MBEs, SBEs, and WSBLEs, and WMBEs as well. So what we will do today is to provide you with those things that we've done to remove some of those barriers, as well as provide you an update in terms of what the outcomes of those things are actually, have actually occurred. Next slide, please. So EBO is always looking for opportunities where we can better serve the public, serve the contractors, and serve you as well. Once we started unwrapping those recommendations, which there were 22 of them, we realized that it would be a great feat to concentrate on all 22 at one time. We broke them up in goals that we could oversee, that we could look into, and those goals are improving communication, increasing participation, and improving business engagement. I will provide just an update of those 22 items. We chose about half of them, and then we'll go through what that means and what does that look like. When we started really unpacking those 11 recommendations, 11 out of the 22, we realized that they were categorized in 2 areas. One was in policy issues, and the other ones were programmatic. And so making some of these changes we will talk about both. The first one that was presented was to increase the sheltered market program from $300,000 to $400,000. That is in policy development. We are working internally as well as under the advice of legal in terms of what are those steps we need to take to present that to you as a policy change. The second one was to increase the purchasing thresholds for informal bids from $25,000 to $100,000. Those thresholds have not been increased since 1993. And The draft policy for that is currently under legal review. We're looking at increasing the thresholds for bids and RFPs requiring your approval, council, from $100,000 to $150,000. And that draft policy is under legal review before being presented before you. One of the things that was brought up, I think it was last week, and we talked in our previous presentation before you, was to investigate creating a bonding and finance program for WMBEs and SLBEs. Just to level set and just share with you where we are on this, is that the state statutes already allow for us to waive bonds on sheltered markets for construction contracts up to $200,000. And we're currently already doing that. Anything greater than the $200,000, we'll have to go to the state to get those changes. Hillsborough County, we were asked to look at Hillsborough County's program. Hillsborough County is doing that as well as we. However, how we are unlike Hillsborough County, and there's an opportunity for us to improve as well as, and we're in a process of exploring, is that Hillsborough County offers an educational component to their contractors on bonding and insurance and sureties. So we are, as well as accounting. So we're looking at renting some of those ideas to apply them within our space of contractors, so that we can also have the same value add with our contractors and constituents as well. We're investigating reducing, well, you asked us to investigate reduce the insurance limits for WMBEs and LBEs as prime contractors when appropriate. Currently, we review contracts, contractors' insurance requirements, and see if they are applicable. Now, what do I mean by that? There was contractors, we had like delivery contractors who had enormous insurance requirements, and the only thing they were doing was dropping off their delivery products, or mowing contractors, where whenever we see those opportunities where we can reduce or even drop those bonds and insurance requirements, we do that, and we are expanding that even further. We were asked to establish a WMBE, SLBE goals up front prior to, on design build contracts and for CCNA RFQs. What we're doing is that we're reviewing the WMBE and SLBE goal estimates on those contracts prior to the contracts being in the scope development phase. And what we're doing is we're using historical measures that were on similar contracts in the past and setting those goals. Now, after the contracts are, the scope has been confirmed, the design is complete, we'll go back and we'll adjust those actual goals for those projects. We were asked to aggressively enhance the ecosystem for WMBE businesses through recruitment, the certification support, training, mentor-protege programs, to include stakeholders' engagements and other support efforts. As you are familiar, we had our Bridges to Business program. We just had another successful Bridges to Business program last week. One of the things that we're doing is to get the feedback in terms of how can we better support you businesses. I think historically we've just given the contractors something, but now we're taking that extra step to say we want to hear from you. And what we're doing is that we're actually conducting surveys. So at the Bridges of Business, we'll give a survey to say, how would you like to hear from us? How would you like, what are those things that we can do better to support you in your efforts in supporting the city? So we're in the process of compiling all of that information so that we can better serve the public. Part of that is to, what we have done is to ask, how did you hear about us? So that we'll know what methods are the best ways to communicate as well. If they want to hear about us through social media, let's say, we know not to go and put something in the newspaper. So again, we're compiling all of that information. We were to enhance industry stakeholder engagement through interaction to increase subcontracting opportunities. We have the prime contractor sub matchmaking events, 2 scheduled within the remaining of this calendar year. The first of the 2 will be in June, and the next one will be in December. And these are for the large capital projects. So the large projects where we can match the primes with the contractors, and they could talk and can collaborate, may collaborate. Another area that you ask us to really look at, and that is look at the bandwidth of our EBO office. You know, do we need to hire someone? Why is it that we can't get the certifications out done expeditiously? What we have done is that we've used our change management area to go into the EBO office to do a deep dive, peel back the covers to identify those areas that would deem necessary for outsourcing, or deem necessary once we bring someone in, we can have them laser focus on the areas that we need improved. We use this methodology in other departments or portfolios in the city, and they've proven to be quite beneficial and successful. In terms of enhancing our communication, we have done have placed a 6-month look ahead for upcoming opportunities on our CAD website, Contract Admin Department website. This was actually posted in starting in April, and that is continuously being updated. We will continue with our matchmaking and subcontractor events because, again, that we see that's where not only we can provide that opportunity to link those businesses, but we can also identify the areas where we see gaps and start providing those type of help and resources for those particular areas. So with all of those steps and measures that we've taken over the last 4 to 6 months, I have both Greg Hart and Greg Spearman on to present what does that mean and how have we been able to realize some of the successes. So presentation, and Greg, if you're on, please.
Yes, good afternoon. Chairman Goods and City Council, Gregory Hart, Manager, Equal Business Opportunity Office. We are certainly, and I believe we were going to move to the next slide, if you will. Yes, Council, you were requesting an update of our Progressive Infrastructure Planning to Ensure Sustainability Program, and I'd like to present to you the current status of that program. As you know, it is a 20-year, $3 billion endeavor, and if I could bring your attention to the top square on this particular slide, the EBO program is currently tracking 62 contracts, totaling approximately $1.2 billion for infrastructure improvements. The middle square is reflecting 46 of those 62 projects that are active contracts, equating to approximately actually $377 million. Let me note for the record that in building this this graph, we did transpose some numbers. So that $843 million that you're looking at actually represents the 16 projects awaiting final development of GMP budgets. So the 46 projects should read $377 million. that are activated currently. The remaining 16 projects, which await final GMP budget approval, equate to an estimated 843 million. So I want to make sure that that is noted for the record. Of those 46 projects that are activated and underway, we have achieved 22% participation, or approximately $80 million. And I'm going to address how that gets distributed in terms of the certification groups in just a second. But I would like to bring your attention to the bottom square, which is really significant. It's significant because it's the criteria that has been applied for selecting the prime contractors. It's a new policy change that Mayor Castor implemented to bolster the EBO program of inclusion, diversity, and equity. And Mayor Castor actually saw to it that the weighted points for proposals with WMBE and SLB participation had a very significant and weighted incentive associated with it. So what that represents in terms of the 300% increase was that we went from a 5 to 20 point weighted scoring for WMBE inclusion out of a total 100 points in the selection process. Proposers have been more aggressive as a result and more strategic as a result of that incentive with their good faith effort and outreach responsibilities. So that has definitely gotten the attention of our bid and proposal community. They've realized that they can either win or lose being selected by the CCNA selection committee for these large capital projects such as pipes, based on their effort at inclusion of women and minority-owned businesses and small businesses, particularly those underutilized groups. So with that, I'm going to ask that we look at the next slide, because I want to show you how that 22% or $80 million has been distributed among our certified companies. As you can see in this pie chart, 31% of the pipes program MBE, WMBE, SLB participation, 31% is contracted with our Black Business Enterprises, BBEs. And it's notable on this chart, I would like to make mention that, last week, Mayor Castor kicked off Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And it's fitting to highlight on this chart that our Asian business enterprises, the participation contract commitments are at 25% under the PIPES program. So I'm pleased to report that certainly we have taken note of Council's emphasis and focus on doing all that we can to improve participation of our local small minority business community in the PIPES program. Again, it's equivalent to almost $3 billion over a 20-year period. So we've hit the ground to ensure that there's some ongoing and sustainable participation. And hey, we're just beginning. As you well know, there's another $2 billion to be spent over the next 20 years. So this is a recap for your digestion and an update to date on the PIPES program.
Okay, so Greg Spearman, excuse me, if you could speak on the JOCS program.
Thank you, OC, and good afternoon, Chairman Goose and members of council. So if we could have the next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So council, this is basically an update that I'm sharing with you regarding EBO participation enhancements regarding the job order contracting program. As you may recall, we appeared before you on September 4th regarding the 5 JOC contractors that you approved for the job order contracting program. So let me just run through some specific things that we've done to enhance EBO participation. First of all, we established, as you heard Ms. Wynn talk about, 2 Bridges to Business certification tours. One on May 13th at the Boxdale Community Center, and we have an upcoming one on June 10th at the Tampa Convention Center. The May 13th event was kicked off by Mayor Castor, and we also had an attendance, Council Chair Goose, and so we thank you for attending and supporting that event. We've also provided newly city certified firms direct contact with job prime contractors. So the intent here is to make sure that once these firms become certified, that we get them quickly connected to the job prime contractors as soon as possible, because that's the opportunity where they can become quickly engaged if they're ready, willing, and able to participate in ongoing job order contracts. The third bullet, we've requested the job prime contractors to refer non-certified contractors to the EBO department for certification if they meet the certification requirement. So we do know that there are a segment of SLBEs and MWEs who may be working with the job prime contractors that may not be certified. So we have impressed upon the job primes to please refer those companies to Mr. Hart's office so that we can determine their eligibility for certification, and if they are, to get them certified as quickly as possible so that we can include those numbers in our reporting. Next slide, please. We also educated the Gordon Group, and this is our city consultant on the job contracts, as well as the job prime contractors, on the proper way to capture timely subcontractor participation information. Now, what does that mean? We want to make sure that the job prime contractors are capturing the information they need to capture on the MBD Form 10s. These will be the forms that are used for outreach. And secondly, on the MBD Form 20s, and this is the form where the job contractor reflects a commitment and utilization of underutilized certified firms by the city of Tampa. The next bullet, we held an EBO retraining session, Equal Business Opportunity retraining session for job prime contractors on the use of the B2G diversity system so that we can be assured of getting accurate reporting of subcontractor participation in a timely manner. It's very important that we get this information from our job prime contractors so that we can report these numbers accurately in terms of participation. So we had a retraining session, which is required for the job prime to use the B2G system. The last bullet is that we provided the job prime contractors with lists of certified firms for construction and construction-related tasks to assist them in their outreach. Now, what does that mean? The job prime contractors develop with the city what is known as a joint scope. So we believe that it is very beneficial when that joint scope is under development to immediately provide to the job contractors, the job prime contractors, city certified contractors for those specific tasks where we have ready, willing, and able subcontractors so that they can get engaged as soon as possible before the work actually starts. So although these initiatives, council, are in the early stages of implementation by the city, we have seen significant increases in subcontracting percentages for job projects. Now, when we came to you on March 4th of 2021 of this year, when we renewed the 5 job prime contracts, we had a participation level at about 1.2% for BBE. Well, the books were not closed yet on 2020, and I want to just share with you that those numbers only represented about 6 months of reporting for 2020 because we only started the job contract in about the June, July timeframe of 2020. Okay, so the actual participation for 2020, for calendar 2020, or BBEs was 2.27%. Now, let me tell you what the participation level has been this year in 2021 since between the period of January 1st and about the last part of April to the middle part of May. BBE participation, or WMB participation rather, has increased from 26.07% to 47.02%. That represents an 80% participation rate. SLB participation has gone from 22.81% to 27.4%. That represents a 20% participation increase in the rate. But here is the most significant number of them all, and the one that you have asked us to work on in particular, and the reason that we have implemented all of these enhancements. BBE participation has increased from 2.26% to just under 10%. That represents a 334% increase in BBE participation under the job contract. So I hope that you will see that these enhancements are working. And again, this is not a full 6 months yet. This is just from January until about mid-May. So we're excited about the enhancements we put in place, the engagement we have with the job primes, and also with our consultant in terms of getting those numbers up. So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Ms. Nguyen.
I have a question. I think this is wonderful. I've talked to some folks, and I'm glad that the administration heard us. I think it's very important. But the only component that I'm still missing is that when I still hear this is that making sure that we have supervisors, the department heads on board and they understand JOC. How do we hold, we're going to hold everybody else accountable. We're going to retrain everybody else. But how do we do our people? I haven't heard any of that in the presentation. What's the standard performance that we're going to hold our people accountable for to make sure that they're doing and making sure that there's, I want to say a good old boy system, but a good boy system, making sure that we're actually doing what we said we're going to do on our end with our people, because I see we're retraining everybody else and the contractors, everyone else. But what kind of standard performance evaluation, what we're going to hold our people accountable for to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do?
Councilman,
So Councilman, go ahead, Ms.
go on. Well, I'll answer my part of that, Greg, and I'll turn it over to you. Actually, yesterday, just Adri, Kalina and I just had this conversation that we can put all these measures in place, but how do we bring that in-house? How do we bring that in the family? So part of it is to make all of the decision makers and the departments aware that there is a JOCS program and it is an avenue that they could use, as well as providing those types of contractual opportunities that they should be looking at or looking for when they're looking at using JOCS. So it's an educational piece that's required internally, and the Director of Logistics and Asset Management, and I had that conversation just yesterday.
I see it, everything is in a, go ahead, Mr. Spearman.
We have also highly publicized the job order contracting within city administration, and keep in mind, council, that a good part of the participation piece really relies upon the performance of the job contractors. These contractors are rated in terms of their performance. They're the ones who have to make sure that there is full engagement and involvement of BBE participation. We work hand in glove with Mr. Hart's office to make sure that happens. So in addition to the efforts that you heard Ms. Nguyen speak about, there is a significant accountability on the part of the job prime contracts. And we believe, based on the numbers that I just shared with you, that our efforts are having significant results.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Miranda, you're recognized.
I'm sorry, but if I voted for JOCS the last time, I made a mistake. I've been talking about JOCS for 15 years, as you well know, Mr. Spearman. I have nothing against anyone. However, if I remember 15 years ago or so, JOCS was an operation that came into the city and asked a public records request for anything and everybody who was doing business with the city. And you can stop me and correct me anytime you want, because I may be mistaken at some point. Then I was told that the jocks contracts were only for individuals and small items, like if a contractor was doing a roadway and after they left, they didn't have time to do the planning of bringing the grass in place and putting it in the pods and making it look pleasing to the eye, that's what they were doing. Now I see where Jocks is a prime contractor of prime contractors. So I don't know, Jocks came in, got a public record request, we turned it over to them, and they said, oh, these are the ones that you're doing business with? Now you're gonna do business with me. That's what Jocks is. They came in and got the same contractors that we were using, now they're contractors to Jocks, from what I see here, and I don't understand how we can get a better price, and how come we didn't do it ourselves? And no reflection to you, sir, please. So what I'm saying is, how did Jocks become a prime contractor to the prime contractors that we already had in the city of Tampa? I don't understand that. I don't understand how this is not more costly and unless somehow we missed the ball. I'm not saying sometimes I don't make an error. I do, and I admit it. So what I'm saying is, how does Jocks satisfy the needs of the city, and it's less cost effective if they're using the same contractors we were using before? Where is the difference, and how do they get what they want? And the contractor they're hiring, they didn't bring them in. They didn't create new contractors. Maybe some small ones somewhere, but they're the same contractors that the city's been using all along. Am I correct or wrong? You can tell me I'm wrong. I've been told that before.
Right. I'm not aware, Councilman Goose, of the 5 job contracts that we've been using that we've used before on other contracts. But I would like to say that the job order contracting process really is a triangle effect in terms of how we do the work. It's time, it's quality, and performance. And they are able to do this work because it's a performance-based contract, number one. They can do it without the city having to go out and do multiple bids. We would increase our workload significantly to have to go out and bid all these contracts. So it's a performance-based management tool that measures time and performance and within cost, I might add. And it also increases the opportunity for our SLB and MW participation.
I'm not disputing that it doesn't do that, sir. What I'm disputing in myself, that there's a tug of war going in within this little body that's telling me if everything you say is true, then we failed in some degree, not you, but we failed in general as a city, that performance-based contract. I would imagine that every contract is performance-based, because if you get certain amount to do the job one time correctly, that's performance-based. But, so you're telling me, I get a little confused when you hear all these kind of words, because it's you know, we were doing it, but we weren't doing it right. Now they're Jocks contractors, the same contractors that were working with us. They didn't bring in new people. They don't even live here. They're not even near here. They're one's in Washington, one's here. I can tell you who they are by name if you like. I remember all that because I did an investigation on my own. So what I'm saying, what is going on that we cannot do the same thing in Jocks? And I appreciate the words that you're using, Sammy, that they can do it reliably faster. So how come we could do it faster? You said you had to go out for bid. Well, I would imagine that you're still going out for bid. If not, the low bidder is going to complain that the high bidder may get a job. I don't know what's going on.
Again, Councilman Miranda, this is a performance-based contract that allows us to handle many, many projects very, very, very efficiently and very effectively, you know, and very, you know, within a reasonable cost. We would have to do these individually, multiple contracts, and we will not be able to get the work done as quickly. So this is a performance-based contract that enables to operate in a much more efficient manner.
Well, I have my own opinion. I think performance-based contracts should be all of them, and they should be out of the picture. They got to be making something on top of what we're paying. If not, they wouldn't be in business. That's just logical. So every time I see somebody telling the same people that we had as contractors what to do, there's a slice of money going somewhere. And then I'm looking at the Hispanic as only 5%. And I think we did a poor job there.
Mr. Miranda, I think what has happened, and if you look at the city as a whole, when it was downsized. And I hear Mr. Spearman keep saying the workload, the workload. You know, I hear the same thing in the housing department. The workload, and we ain't moving the needle. So I see Mr. Spearman's point on that aspect of I ain't got enough people to do all this work, so I went and got these other folks over here because we just can't do it all. So, but I see your point, which is right, because it's like, okay, well, we can do it, but yeah, we paying somebody else to do it, you know, so I get that. So it's kind of like, I always say that knife that has a point on each end. So I think that's what has happened. What I can see is that we don't have the manpower, the woman power to do what we need to do. And I want to pick on housing, but housing is a big thing right now, and they can't get that work out and get things done because they don't have enough people. And I did talk to Dennis and the chief of staff about that because we may have to start doing some outsourcing in housing as well. Not to get off the point, but I understand what Mr. Spearman is saying, but it is a challenge right now.
Well, I appreciate what you said, Mr. Chairman. I just don't know the difference between hiring more people and what the jocks is getting for their benefit of doing the job. So I don't know those numbers. I don't know if jocks is getting 1%, 1.5%, 2% of something, and what equates to hiring people for that same amount of money.
Gotcha.
I don't have that information.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Anyone else before we let Ms. Wynn continue? Ms. Wynn?
No, that's all I have, council.
Well, what I can say is this. A couple of my colleagues are not here, but I am glad that the administration put up the effort to move the ball. We know it had to be moved. We hated to do what we had to do, but you know, it wasn't because of this administration, but because previous things have gone on, and it's always the way we've always done it. Well, we can't have that thinking anymore around here because time changes every day. It doesn't stand still. So I'm glad that we are moving the ball, but my thing is still we've got to make sure that those other directors, administrators understand the new day in the process and say we got to get things moving for blacks, Hispanics, white, everybody, but make sure the playing field's equal for everybody and everybody's making a bit of the dough because everyone's hungry. So I'm glad of the efforts, but again, I'm hoping that I know we're talking about it, but I want to make sure that we have something, a policy, or have something that we hold those other folks who have these contracts, as far as administration staff, to make sure that we're moving the ball on our end and not just trying to hold those folks accountable. And I can say that it is difficult sometimes with some of these jobs that we try to find folks to do those jobs and we don't have them to do. So I do understand that as well. And I do understand because I've given many names and numbers to Mr. Spearman and Mr. Hart, and I get upset when they email me back. So I've tried to call them and they ain't called me back, and that upsets me tremendously. So I do understand that to no end as well. But I do thank you for the presentation. Looking forward for another update soon and see where that ball has been kicked as well.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Anyone else? All right. We thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you, gentlemen, as well. We'll
Thank you,
move up to item number 10. Mr. Dingfelder is not here. Who has item number 10? All right, Kate.
Good afternoon, Council. Abby Feely, Director of Development and Growth Management. We are here today on item number 10 and 11. We have both of those items. They are related to Chapter 27 of the Land Development Code, and we've packaged them for you today in a singular presentation. You said Councilman Dingfelder is not here. Suling, do you have the presentation? Thank you. And also, LaShawn Dock just joined me in my office as well. So she is with me this afternoon. She's gonna cover a couple of the slides for you, as well as myself. So next slide, please. As I mentioned, there were a couple motions made in relation to the potential for text amendments to go to a quarterly cycle. And also, there was a discussion that came from a few months ago on the potential for administrative lot splits. There was a discussion of a 5%. We workshopped that, came back with you, asked for some additional time on that we wanted to research whether or not that would be adequate if that was considered. And we're back before you today on those two items. Next slide, please. So our workshop goals today with you, Council, is to discuss first those text amendments. We would like to present a potential alternative for the processing of text amendments on the quarterly basis. And we would also like to discuss with you potential for a set of changes to the privately initiated text amendments that reflect some of your more recent directives, which included having public information sessions and doing some modifications to language also that we've kind of come up with as we've researched this item. So those would be our two goals in relation to the text amendments. And then in relation to the lot split, we would also like to provide you with some recommendations on that today and discuss some criteria and the associated process under which those would be handled. So to lead off on the text amendments, if you could go to the next slide, Suling, please. One more. I'm going to turn it over to LaShawn to give you some background and then also discuss some of the research she conducted from other municipalities.
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman and Council. LaShawn Dock with Development and Growth Management. So Council, what I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of background regarding our current process for text amendment processing. One is currently the applications are processed twice a year. So this is in January and in July. This would include both the public and the privately initiated amendments. By the publicly initiated amendments, those are the amendments that are either directed by City Council or either there are amendments that are placed through by the planning manager or the zoning administrator. Each cycle is approximately 6 months long. So this gives you an approximate time frame. It actually just depends on the request. That time frame can vary. Each cycle can contain both publicly initiated and privately initiated changes. Just make a note that the privately initiated changes, they are a common practice in many jurisdictions. In a couple of slides, I'm going to show you that comparison. It's important to note also that in processing these, that staff currently serves as the code writer, currently coordinates, conducts the public outreach. There's really no formalized process for processing the text amendment. And currently, one staff member is responsible for processing these text amendments and is also responsible for other duties in addition to that. No formal application currently exists. So parameters for processing, there are no limitations on the scope of the request. So that's some of the things we're looking to change out of our recommendations today. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is before you now, Council, is a comparison of jurisdictions. What we've done is we've taken data from 4 other jurisdictions. So what we used was in the first column, you see the city of Tampa. So that's our process. The first thing we looked at was whether or not privately initiated text amendments were allowed in these other jurisdictions. You can see by looking across that top row that these other jurisdictions, Madeira Beach, Hillsborough County, City of St. Pete, they all allow privately initiated text amendments. The City of Orlando was the only one that did not allow. The City of Orlando is a little different in that they only process amendments that are directed by the mayor or either their planning commission. The next bit of data that was provided for you is the fees. So you can see across the board of the entities that process privately initiated, we have the lowest fee. which is something that we're going to make a recommendation on also. Also, the pre-submittal meeting that's required for all of them, all jurisdictions. The next one that we received the data on was whether or not the applicant is required to do public outreach, whether it's prior to submittal or after the time that they submit their request for a privately initiated amendment. You can see that currently we do not require the applicant to conduct the public outreach. That is conducted by city staff. But when you look at Madeira Beach, you look at City of St. Petersburg, they do require the applicant to do that public outreach. And speaking to both of those jurisdictions, it is required before they even submit. This way, the public is made aware of what is coming, what would be submitted, and they've already had discussions with the public prior to submittal. The last row that was provided in this chart is whether or not additional fees, where it says, it's just to show you, council, that although those fees were charged, they are charged by these other jurisdictions, they also charge additional fees on top of that when needed for additional services. So the next slide, please. So for recommendations, the first thing is we would like to be able to distinguish and separate the privately initiated amendments from the staff or council initiated amendments from those publicly initiated requests. And we would like to introduce a new schedule. So for privately initiated amendments, one of our recommendations would be to revise our fee schedule, clarify the application requirements for the applicant, require a public information meeting for the applicant, and require planning commission presentation, because currently city staff presents to the planning commission at both their briefing and public hearing, and we would like to put that responsibility on the applicant since it is a privately initiated request. Next slide, please. So in the recommendations and continuing with the recommendations, this is what we're proposing for text amendment schedule. So we're looking to split it so that we have 2 cycles for private amendments and 2 cycles for publicly initiated amendments. That's the publicly initiated and any cleanup items. So for the private, that will remain the same, January 15th and July 15th. And for the publicly initiated, adding an April 15th and an October 15th cycle. So that gives each the private and the public 2 cycles twice a year.
And LaShawn, if I can just speak, council, to part of this recommendation, this really came about as we, Councilman Dingfelder had made the motion, and then we were looking at how we were processing things, how other jurisdictions were processing these types of amendments, and then also the overall workflow, as well as some of the interaction that we've had with council lately, where there was a recent cycle that was a privately initiated cycle that came, that there was some confusion as to, well, whose cycle was that? I think what this recommendation really would do was allow us to have those privately initiated in the 2 established cycles, and then dedicated time for us to be examining the publicly initiated amendments that are either coming out of council motions or are coming out of T3 initiatives, things that we're looking at to move the organization forward, or general code changes that we've been discussing for some time. But that would really give us those organized discussions and that opportunity to really do the planning and legwork that go behind putting those amendments together. If we could go to the next slide, please. What we did in this slide, I wanted to show you, is the different steps to actually processing the plan amendment, or I'm sorry, the text amendment, and how, if they're done on a quarterly basis, many of those efforts are going to overlap. As LaShawn mentioned to you, right now, we only have 1 dedicated lead in the processing of those text amendments. It is LaShawn. And as you can see, many of those efforts and each of the steps start to overlap. And that's where we were saying, you know what, if we can create 2 dedicated cycles, 2 for the private initiated text amendments and 2 for the publicly initiated text amendments, that would really give us an opportunity to do the planning, do the focus, do the outreach. That is one step that we've gone ahead and put in to this today to show you. I think since the last time we saw you, we did go ahead and set up a public information session for June 7th. We're conducting it coming up, and that is going to provide information. Just a little sidebar, that's going to provide information on the sound workshop that was just before you. This text amendment workshop that's before you today, the lot split workshop that's before you today, and then the privately initiated cycle from Mr. Michelini and Mr. Lum that we tried to bring before you about a month ago, and your direction was to please conduct the public information session. So we have now set that up, and this timeline now reflects the integration of those additional steps that we're looking to have moving forward. Next slide, please. So as LaShawn mentioned, for the privately initiated text amendments, we would, and again, these are recommendations that are before you today, and much like the sound workshop, we'd like to get your feedback on the recommendations. We would put that feedback into the information session, and then we would come back to you in August to bring you the exact language of these associated recommendations within the context of the code. So the first is that update of the fee schedule. As you saw, our fee schedule is substantially less than other jurisdictions. In addition to that, you pay one fee whether you're recommending one change or you're recommending the entire chapter change. So we would research and provide back to you a tiered system that would look to capture some of those different levels of the applications and requests that are coming in. The second would be to clarify the application requirements. Right now, an application can come in and say, I want to change text on X, but it won't write the exact language of what's being requested. So staff is actually serving in that capacity right now and taking an applicant's idea and then generating the text. So we would ask that the applications be changed to include the exact text that they are asking for, a written justification and executive summary associated with that, and then what code sections are being impacted by that proposed modification. So if you're making, for example, a parking change to storefront residential, there's storefront residential parking in 5 different tables in the code. So that they would need to be showing us all changes. And right now that onus sits on staff to find those changes and make them throughout. And we still would be doing that. We would just be doing that more from the review and implementation stage than the actual generating those modifications. The third would be to require a public information outreach by the applicant. In some jurisdictions, that's a public information session, as LaShawn discussed, and I think that's what we would be requesting as well, or suggesting as well, that we have a public information session. The private applicant would hold that. The applicant, right now it's kind of an oddity because it appears that staff is sitting in an advocacy role for the applicant's text amendment, but we're not the ones that generated that amendment. So we're trying to provide some clarification on that as well. Staff would still evaluate the amendment and make a recommendation as to whether or not we would support that amendment. But right now it's a little unclear as to how that amendment's being generated and under what context. So we'd like to get that clarified as well. And lastly, would be to have the applicant represent themselves and their amendment at the Planning Commission briefing and hearing. So that would be the fourth recommendation that would go along with the private initiated amendment.
That's it.
That concludes your presentation, Abby?
that is the end of the text amendment presentation, yes.
I'm gonna take a
We
few
can have
questions
discussion.
now from council members who have their hands. I'll give Mr. Dingfelder be recognized first, and I'll go Mr. Maniscalco will be second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ladies. So going back to the core issue about privately initiated amendments. So if I'm Joe Citizen or Josephine Citizen, or maybe I'm a fan, the homeowners association, or maybe I'm Carol Ann Bennett, a very involved neighborhood person, and I've got a good idea about a Chapter 27 amendment. You know, what are my options as that type of person? Well, my experience tells me the options or the way they go about is they contact their elected officials, us, and they say, you know, we really think that this part of Chapter 27 needs changing. And they come to their elected representatives, and then, or maybe they mention it to you guys, you know, at one of your neighborhood meetings or something like that. And then it evolves like that. I kind of equate it to Tallahassee or Washington, D.C. If you have an idea that you think is great, you're not allowed to walk into Tallahassee to the Capitol building and put it on the floor as your bill, privately initiated bill. You have to go through one of your representatives or maybe a staff person and get momentum that way. I've always thought it was really weird that if you've got the money, okay, and you've got lawyers or experts, that you can just walk into city council and with great momentum with the Chapter 27 amendment. And you have a totally uneven playing field with Joe Citizen or Josephine Citizen or Than or a neighborhood association or Carol Ann Bennett. And I just think that that's weird. And frankly, I think it's wrong. I think, Mr. Shelby, you were doing a little more additional research. And Abby, I appreciate you and LaShawn showed us four or five jurisdictions. But Mr. Shelby, correct me if I'm wrong, you were doing a little more research in terms of looking all across the state to see how prevalent this is and that sort of thing?
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Dingfelder.
You're recognized, sir.
I'm sorry, thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I had asked this to be continued the last meeting, and it is scheduled to come back on the 24th at your workshop on June 24th. And yes, the scope of my research is broader, more population-based throughout the city, throughout the state, perhaps even focusing on strong mayor forms of government, and also including the process of comprehensive plan text amendments as well. So this is solely for Chapter 27 today. So I will be coming back to you on the 24th with some more information that might be of value to you.
Okay. All right. So I think that information is really important, and we probably should take this valuable information that Ms. Feely and Ms. Dock have brought to us and defer it over until Mr. Shelby gives us a little bit of his research on that. But that's where I was coming from originally, that I just question the existence of this privately initiated, because I think it creates an uneven playing field. Uneven in terms of people who have money, several $1,000s to do this, and folks who don't and have to go through the typical legislative process in approaching us. In regard to, and Abby, you mentioned on the pending, Mr. Michelini and Mr. Lum's pending proposals, that public information session is in June?
Yes, sir, June 7th at 6 p.m. and we have sent out notice.
Is there a location or is it Zoom or what?
It's virtual.
It's virtual, okay.
Yeah,
all right,
we
so
hope that the next one we will, be able to get in person, but we're going to do this one virtual. We have sent out notifications to our mail list for the Tampa Cares. We've also posted with the city clerk, and then we have it on our website.
okay, maybe it's something that Murray can circulate to neighborhood associations as well.
Yes.
And then, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your indulgence. In regard to the quote, publicly initiated amendments, which basically I think is just council initiated amendments, although it appears that you've added, the mayor's or the administration's initiated amendments, and that would be what you're calling public, right, Abby?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Traditionally, for some reason, council in the past limited ourselves to twice a year. And I brought this up, who knows, a year ago, and I said, why are we limiting ourselves to twice a year? Because sometimes there might be a pressing issue that we want to move on more rapidly. Now, I'm not saying we should be able to just do it willy-nilly 52 weeks a year and throw that at you. But what I said before, and I'm going to repeat it again today, is it appears that your recommendation still says that we should be limited to twice a year in terms of that cycle. I would say that if there's 4 potential cycles going on, that we should be able to enter quarterly at any given time in that quarter. And that would be our legislative decision to make that change. And I just don't know why we'd want to have our hands tied. We always want to be respectful to staff and to your time, but if you're laying out a quarterly schedule, I think we should be able to jump in at any one of those quarters. So I'm throwing that out there to City Council for discussion, but that's where I was coming from a year ago when I brought this up.
Ms. Maniscalco, was you next, sir?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Maniscalco, you recognized.
Just briefly on the fee, which is being addressed. I don't know what the fees are going to be. I know you're going to bring that back to us, but I calculated that we're 45% of the next cheapest, which is $666 and 50 cents compared to Hillsborough, which is $14.95. So I think someone pays $1,000 just to put in an application to vacate an alley, yet something of this magnitude, whatever it is, big or small, they're only getting it for $666. So, I mean, it's not even competitive. We're giving it away. And there's a loss of revenue there. And just the number is 666. I mean, that's, I'm glad we're changing that. I'm surprised not 666 and 13 cents at this point. But you're already addressing it. I mean, even if it becomes $1,000 or if it's a tiered structure, depending on what that the individual is applying for, we've lost a significant amount of money, I think, over the years. So I'm glad you're bringing that up. But that was it, and I agree with what Councilmember Dingfelder was just saying, and he touched on quite a few issues. And those were my only concerns. Thank you.
Ms. Miranda, you recognize, sir.
First of all, sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would imagine that 66650 is better than 66666.
That's right.
And I appreciate you bringing that up, sir. And I'm looking at what Mr. Dingfelder said, and I agree with him partly. The public initiated motion to bring something up could very well be filtering with the same ones that the council bring in when the public comes to see the 7 elected officials and the mayor 8. They may be something that's liable, and we bring it up as part of the general duties that our responsibilities are. So now, if there's an individual policyholder, public owner of a land that wants to do something, he or she can do it and pay the fee. But if there's something that, in general, that there's change for the benefit of all the citizens, then I think that the council, getting the letters and getting the information and having the conversation that we have with the general public in general, more than likely that'd be one of the council requests or one of the mayoral requests to go through. So I can see where they can get it done for much less than 66650 at zero if they have the wherewithal to contact their elected officials. So I'm concerned about them not having the ability, but I think they do have the ability if they work the system. That's what I think. So I think that, to me, the system there, when I looked at that $666.50, and I looked at the comparable Hillsborough County at $14.50, others at $2,000, others at $2,200, I think there's something to be desired there too. And Ms. Feely did, and Ms. Lecoq did say that they're looking at a review of costs. Maybe you can give us at the review of costs what it really costs, because you have a lot of hours that you all put in, and it's just not 1 or 2 people, it's countless people that work in the city of Tampa for the general taxpayers, and we're using that fund to fund the project, to hear it and everything else. So there's got to be a concerted effort as far as the real cost, and then we can look at it and say, this is what it costs. And I'm not against raising fees or lowering fees, depending on the needs of society. Thank you very much, Mr.
Ms. Shelby, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarification, because the setting of fees was raised initially by Mr. Maniscalco, that in the sense that he mentioned that it would be coming back to council. I just want to clarify the process of setting fees in your department, Abby. Maybe you could inform council. How, will it be coming back to them, the setting of fees? Oh, no.
Set by resolution. I mean, we have a self-amending of a certain percentage each year, and we haven't raised those, and that's probably how it got to the 666 because of the 1% increase years ago. But it is set by resolution. I mean, we would come back, but I want to come back to you first with what we're going to recommend. You know, I just wanted to actually discuss with you today whether or not, you know, that would be feasible or be supportive for us to go ahead and do that, you know, and that would be one of our recommendations in evaluating the entire, the process we currently have.
You're recognized, Mr. Dingfelder.
Thank you. Mr. Moreno, I just wanted to mention one thing. I appreciate your kind words earlier. When the privately initiated amendments come into us, like the one that Mr. McLeany and Mr. Lum have pending, they're not specifically related to one parcel. They are amending the entire code as related to all the public, as you stated. So often, and that's one of the reasons that we kind of slowed them down and said, wait a second, you need to go talk to the public, and this needs to be vetted much more. But I just wanted to clarify that it's not like a small, you know, a small comp plan amendment or a rezoning that just applies to one parcel. This is, when they do these Chapter 27 amendments, they impact everybody, and that's why I think the level playing field concept is really fair, and frankly, I think we should eliminate privately initiated amendments and let everybody use the public process, which is through us and through staff or through the mayor, or you know, just come in through the normal channels instead of pay to play. Thank you.
In no way did maybe I got misinterpreted. I don't mean one little thing, I meant the whole thing.
Okay.
And I appreciate it, but I wasn't using any names, so I don't want to get into a hassle later on in life defending something that I said or didn't say. That's why I use the term that I did use. And I apologize if I injured anyone.
Anyone else?
So I guess on both of these issues, since Mr. Shelby's got a little more work to come back at us, probably like to bring it back. Is that at the next workshop, Mr. Shelby?
That's what it's set for, council, and again, my apologies for the delay. If council, it's council's pleasure. But yes, this is coming back on the, what you had asked of me is coming back on the 24th on the June workshop.
Okay. So if you want to entertain a motion, I'd like, and with all due respect, I know we drag on things sometimes, but for very good reason, I'd like to see Mr. Shelby's research and come back at the next workshop in June.
Second.
Motion on the floor, Mr. Dingfelder, second by Mr. Maniscalco.
That's June, yeah. There's a bunch of stuff. How about 11?
Well, the 9 a.m. is the one that I'm presently on the
All right.
calendar for, June 24th.
So we'll just piggyback that onto the one that's already on the schedule.
June 24th, 9 a.m.
Yes, sir.
All right. Motion on the floor.
Chairman Goode?
Mr. Shelby, what your recommendation is coming back on the 24th? The clerk wants clarification.
No, actually, it's not my recommendation. Okay. There was a motion made last week to put that item on to the 24th, and I believe it's Councilmember Dingfelder's motion to add these items to come back at that time, if that's council's pleasure.
You have it, Madam Clerk? Correct. Well, motion on the floor, but I will do the discussion. Ms. Feely?
Thank you, Councilman Goods. I just wanted an opportunity to respond to part of what Councilman Dingfelder said. You know, so right now, publicly initiated amendments are rolling at all times. And we have the two privately initiated cycles that sometimes are quite voluminous, so to speak, into what comes in. So I think part of our intent was to give dedicated time and staff resources to be able to plan and really look at those amendments that are coming forth from the council in a more responsive and thorough way than what resources will allow if we just keep tacking them on and keep that kind of rolling schedule. And that's why I was trying to create those 2 times of year when we would be focused on those matters of importance that are coming from the council or from the administration or from the public through the council and back to you. If we were to just keep them tagged on to the private initiated cycles, I would say then please just give us 2 cycles, and then perhaps we would limit the number of applications we would take in, because if you go back to the slide where I kind of showed you the different steps, it requires a lot of our team of 1, to be processing these at all times. And that really is where that came from. I understand your intent for no privately initiated amendments, and I did reach out to Marty to see if any of that research was available so we could incorporate that, but it wasn't, and I didn't want to continue the discussion today to a later date. So just wanted to give you a little bit of background on that, and that's kind of why we're here today, is we are one of those cycles that is just kind of out there. And I would like to try to provide some structure to that would ultimately allow us, I think, to do a better job in the long run of processing these and really addressing the modifications and the intent behind them.
So, Mr. Chair.
You recognize, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Feely, I hear you, and I think there's some good ideas in what you're saying, and I know that staff time is always limited, and you guys are overworked, and I appreciate all that. What I would suggest is between now and in the June workshop that we meet, that we convene. I see Ms. Post on the screen as well, and I'd urge her to be there as well, and I'm totally available to meet with you guys in person or virtually to kind of hash this out and see where we go. But that's just one councilman, obviously. But since it was my original motion, I'd be more than happy to meet with you guys.
Currently, there's a motion on the floor, Ms. Dingfelder, second by Mr. Maniscalco. We've had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Motion passed unanimously. Gentlemen, we come to an hour now of,
Do they have another item?
you have another, I'm sorry, okay, I thought you did, I'm sorry, all right, Ms. Feely, I'm sorry. Number 11, okay, I'm sorry.
One of the other directives from council was to examine the opportunity for administrative lot creation. And we had a workshop on this and a memo that came to you a while back about the old 80% rule and how the city used to have a process for the administrative creation of lots. And the 80% rule then turned into a special use and later on was then eliminated and lot splits became PDs. And I believe you were seeing a lot of these and some of them were very minor. And the question was raised as to could there potentially be an administrative process for a 5% split? When a lot was 5% less than the zoning lot requirements, and we did some research on that. And then today we're back with you to present that and our recommendations on that motion. And Eric is here with me. You have to kind of scoot in a little. Eric's here with me this afternoon, and we're going to go through this presentation real quick. It's only a couple slides.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Okay, so Ling, next slide, please. So here is the motion that came down in the 5% that was related to it in relation to the dimensional criteria. So next slide. What we did, council, was we went ahead and looked at the rezonings that were considered by you. We reviewed 22 of the approved zoning cases that requested lot splits, and 12 cases were Euclidean and 10 were the PDs. on average of the 10 PDs, the lot reduction was 17%. So in relation to establishing a 5%, it would not have captured those 10 most recent cases that came to you as PDs. That being said, and kind of bridging the gap between the old 80% rule and the 5% that was being requested for evaluation, we would recommend back to you, if you would like to do or have an administrative process, that it would be a 10% process. And for example, on a 10% process in the RS60, which is a 60 by 100 lot, that would allow for the creation of a 54-foot lot, 54 by 100, as an administrative process. Just to mention that in the overlay districts and the special districts, they already have buildable lot provisions for platted lots. So in East Tampa, where you have some 38-foot platted lots, those wouldn't be splits or administrative, they're allowed by right. And we do have a map, next slide please, that illustrates for you those districts that have the lot of record provision. They do deal with the date at which the lot, the overlay or the special district was created. I'm sorry, so it will say as of January 1st of 2008 or 2006. If you were a legal lot of record, plat or deed in any of these areas, depending on their implementation date, you are considered a buildable lot, and you would not be required to have the split or to have an administrative process for your creation to be buildable. Next slide, please. So our recommendation to you today, and if you are in agreement with this, we would have a public information, we would include this in our public information session on June 7th. And then we would come back to you in August with the actual code language for consideration based on the following. And Kate's with us. Kate and Eric and myself have already been looking at the language and getting that together, but we did want to start off with just the general concept with you today. And the first is to allow for the administrative creation of these lots under the 10% through the formal decision process. That is a noticed process. So there would be public notice associated with any of those applications. And then we would create the criteria that goes with those. And that would be 10% of the required, a reduction of up to 10% of the required lot dimension and or lot width. It would need to be consistent with the development pattern of the surrounding area. And we put that 1320, which is a quarter mile. And then that this would allow us to grant the recognition of any existing setback. So what typically happens is you have a double lot and you have a structure on one portion of that, or on the original platted lot on one side, and then you have a vacant platted lot on the other side. And people come in, and this would be to recognize on that interior lot line, if there was an existing structure there. Right now, that person has to go and get a variance for that setback if it does not meet the 7 feet, or they come to you through a PD to grant that interior lot setback for that existing structure. And we would recommend that this process be allowed to recognize that, not to vest that, not to give it as a variance, but to recognize that it's a non-conforming characteristic of the site. And that's different, because in a variance, it actually vests that setback of, let's say it's 6 feet, and then if destroyed, it can be built back at 6 feet. In this case, it would recognize it, but it would not vest it. And in the future, if that house were demoed and then rebuilt, it would need to meet code. So that is our third recommendation in relation to that. And then we just have some general cleanup, language cleanup, where it talks about reconfiguration and reorientation. And we're looking to just clean that up and have that be uniform across that code section, which currently is section 2711 of the Land Development Code. Next slide, please.
You recognize Dingfelder?
That's it.
Well, thank you, Abby. That was very, and Eric, that was very comprehensive. And the, could you go back to the, I think it's the first slide or the second slide? Let's see, keep going up. Boop. Okay, next one. There we go. Okay, staff reviewed 22 approved rezoning cases, 12 were Euclidean, 10 were PDs, with an average of 17%. I guess I'd like to know what the median was. The reason this jumped out at me, and I think the rest of council members who supported my motion, was we were seeing these, if somebody was 2 feet off and they had to come in for an entire PD. And how much does that cost them, Abby? A couple $1,000 at least in 6 months, or maybe 3,000-4,000 in 6 months, and yada 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 because they were 2 feet off for whatever reason, and there were differing reasons. So, and that 2 feet could be accommodated by the 5%. I think what you're suggesting with the 10% is perhaps a little bit further than I might want to go. I think what I'd like to do is take this concept and take it out and vet it to the public. I'm sure the developers would be thrilled with it, but vet it to the neighborhood associations and the development community and see how they feel about 5% versus 10% before we give our final direction. I think it'd be good to hear from them because, for example, when you're looking at that 60 feet to 54 feet, in a place like Virginia Park, which has been fighting a lot of these, they might take great offense at that. But maybe they could be amenable to a 5% reduction. So anyway, that's just my thought on this.
And if I could respond to that real quick, I mean, we actually wanted to go back and see, of those that you considered, how many would we have been able to complete administratively versus have them come to you as a PD, and I believe the answer was none at 5%. So.
Well, I know I've seen some of them at 2 or 3 feet. Because that's where I kind of came up with the 5%. Maybe they weren't PDs, maybe they were the Euclideans, but maybe you could just, give us a list of those 22 cases so we could actually, see firsthand. Sometimes median is more informative than average because one of them might have been, a lot, and that could skew the average. Anyway, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll go to Mr. Miranda. He's been doing it for a while. Then we'll go to Mr.
No,
Carlson.
I'm just scratching around, and I'm listening to all the council members, and let's say you have a setback of 7 feet, right, from one house to the other side setback, I think it's 7, right? So you want to give 5%. 7 times 12 is 84 inches, correct?
This is 5% of the lot width.
Oh, lot width.
Yes.
All right, so you can apply the same principle to a lot width. If you take 5% of a lot width, I don't know what the lot width is, let's say it's 70 feet wide, I guess, and you're 50 feet, whatever you want to do it, and you take it back by inches. What you're talking about is maybe 4.5 inches, depending on how much you want to give. 5% means an awful lot in different mathematical areas. If it's a 20-foot thing, setback, and you're only giving 5%, you can't tell, the naked eye can't tell. But the smaller the setback, and 5% then, even though it's equal to the same sums as far as 5% of those numbers, looks much greater because you're closer. Since you're already close to the building, it looks much closer. You follow me? The metrics, I don't figure it out quite in my mind how something's going to look very different if you're already close to not having a setback. I'm not opposed to the 5%, but I got to look at metrics to see how it looks in different size lots.
So I guess what we're looking at might apply to a 50-foot lot or more likely a 60-foot lot. Actually, I guess we've seen them on 50-foot lots. So at 50 feet, at 5% reduction would be 2.5 feet. At 60 feet, 5% reduction would be 3 feet. So what we're saying is, instead of having to come to council for that 2.5 foot or 3 foot modification, and we're basically, usually we're just talking about the lot width at the street. So instead of coming to council at 2.5 feet or 3 feet, what we're thinking about or considering is maybe let them do it administratively. And Mr. Miranda, you probably remember that 80% rule that Ms. Salcena vehemently hated.
Ms.
ultimate-
Veazey was the one that would bring it up.
Yeah.
I believe it was her and some others.
Right, and ultimately got rid of the 80% rule, but basically, I think, Abby, was a 20% reduction, right?
Yes.
Eric is shaking his head for the record. So, that was pretty extreme. That basically said, hey, if you're within 20%, you don't have to come to council, you don't have to get a variance, maybe you could do it administratively or whatever. That was pretty extreme. What we're talking about here is still a little bit of relief for that property owner, but not too much. Anybody else?
Mr. Carlson, you recognize, sir?
Just when you come back, if you come back, please separate these so we can vote on them separately. Similar to what Mr. Dingfelder said at the end, I think 10% is way too much. There are too many neighborhoods, especially in South Tampa. And Mr. Miranda says we shouldn't treat other neighborhoods differently, but I think that 10% would be upsetting to lots of people. But I wonder also on, even if it's 5%, is it by the way you wrote it, it looks like it's a new entitlement. So instead of 60 feet, it would just be 57. But is it possible to build in that it's at the discretion of the administration so that they can make a judgment, but it's not a guaranteed entitlement?
Yes, there were criteria that talked about compatibility and the establishment of the lot. It's under the general section of creation of lots that is in the code.
It's not loose discretion, it's sort of administrative discretion. There's check boxes. That's what Abby is saying. So staff would review what's going on in that quarter-mile circle, and if it's compatible to allow that 3 foot reduction, then they would or could allow it.
Yeah, the only thing I'm suggesting is that it not be an automatic entitlement. We see so many cases where people come before us, even on big zoning changes, where there's an expectation that the entitlement will change. And I think we have to do a better job of setting expectations.
So if I could just give you, an example on this would be with the 5% example, where you had mentioned it would be a 57-foot lot. So this would be if there is a subdivision, which 57 feet isn't a typical subdivision platted lot size, but if there were a subdivision and somebody had a lot currently where they had 114 feet, 2 platted lots, and they were coming back, what you normally see before you is people coming back wanting to reestablish the platted lots that are underneath their zoning lot. And so in this case, if somebody had the 114 feet and it was 2 platted 57-foot lots, through a 5% administrative, they would be able to create that single lot as 2 57-foot lots without coming before City Council. But we'll go back and look at that list, the 22, and give you some additional information on that. Initially, I'm not sure that a 5%, how many applications that's really going to save you, or how much, and setting up that whole process. But let us evaluate that, and we can come back and talk to you about that.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman.
You recognize, sir?
Thank you. And I would encourage you to add that to your discussion with the community in June, whatever that was, June 4th, to your information session. And as long as we're vetting these kind of issues, to include that discussion and see what kind of feedback we get on 5% versus 10%.
Will do.
Okay. That's all I got.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Feely.
Should we, are you gonna bring that back, or should we bring that back, or what?
I'm gonna go 24th, right? June 24th.
So if you go forward, 2 more slides, Suling. I did have just a general kind of update. I know I verbally talked with you. It's toward the end of the presentation, Suling, where it says next steps. I know I verbally mentioned this earlier. We do have that June 7th public information session that we will be bringing the noise items, the amplified sound items that we workshopped with you about 2 months ago. The text amendment change that we just talked about, that one I would probably put on hold and not discuss at the information session until we get Mr. Shelby's research and we know the direction of council on that. And then this item here on the 5%, 10%, we would talk about that on the 7th. And then the private initiated amendment that was asked to be workshopped with the public is also being handled on the 7th. That being said, I believe that Mr. Michelini and Mr. Lum are scheduled to come back to you on June 24th with their findings from the information session, and then an opportunity to present those changes to you, which they had not done under their previously scheduled time. And then we would come back to you with this, what we're now compiling as this package of public initiated amendments that are out there that we're trying to get back on one track for you at the end of August. It's in that. So Lynn, can you go to that slide, please? Keep coming forward toward the end of the presentation. Mine is not changing. Maybe you all are seeing something. Oh, here we go. Keep going, keep going. One more. There we go. Oh, we passed it. One back. There you go. So, yep, McElhaney and Lum are coming back on the 24th. We would come back to you on August 27th with these items. Now, the text amendment per your direction today, will come back with you to listen to Marty's presentation on June 24th and see how that may impact what we discussed today, and also coordinate with Councilman Dingfelder on that meeting as requested.
And how about June 24th also on this 5%, 10%? That way we can be on the same page when we get to August 27th.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that a motion or necessary?
I don't know if she needs a motion. You want a motion, Mr. Shelby?
No, I'm just asking whether the clerk would want, do we need a motion, Ms. Feely? Would you prefer a motion or not necessary? I see it.
It's, as long as the clerk's aware that we're going to put it on the agenda on the 24th, or a motion to bring it back on the 24th.
All right, I'll go ahead and move it just for the clerk, that this 5% or 10%, for lack of a better word, variance or forgiveness or whatever, issue will come back on the 24th for additional discussion.
Second, in the essence of time.
Motion from Mr. Dingfelder, second by Mr. Miranda. All in favor? All opposed? Any opposed?
Thank you.
All right, motion be granted, unanimous consent. Anything else, Ms. Feely?
No, Chairman Goods, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right. I'm gonna go down the, open up for information reports and new business, and then at the end, I'm gonna say a few things about a situation of last week of most importance. Mr. Vieira, anything, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, just very briefly, I motion for Renee Warmack and Sam Piazza to come before City Council at a regular session on July 15th, 2021 at 9 a.m. in honor of Disability Awareness Day to provide a 5-minute presentation on their documentary movie Because of Sam.
Motion by Mr. Vieira, second by Mr. Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And the next, House Bill 53 was what many were afraid was going to be a preemption bill on our apprenticeship ordinance that we worked with Mayor Castor and all of us working together to pass. And I'm pretty darn sure it didn't happen. But I'd like to have staff. I say that because it's such a weird bill, but whatever. It appears to be a bill that preempts ordinances where there are state dollars used, and that wouldn't appear to be relevant for us. But I motion for staff to report on House Bill 53 and its impact on the City of Tampa's apprenticeship ordinance, and we can do that. What are we in, May, June, July? At the end of July is fine, whatever's.
What do you have on the clerk for the end of July?
Mr. Vieira, if that's the case, congratulations.
Let's see, man. Let's see what happens, buddy. We'll see. July 29th? Yes, that's fine here.
We're good there. Motion by Mr. Vieira, I think it was a second by Mr. Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And nothing else, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Maniscalco, nothing. Mr. Carlson, sir.
I've spoken to people in other cities, and I've seen the press of other cities. Other cities are having public conversations about the American Rescue Plan money, and I haven't heard that we've scheduled anything about that yet. So unless somebody knows something, I think we should.
Mr. Vieira, didn't you ask for?
I did.
You did? Okay, sorry.
I know, and I mean, you can make the motion if you'd like, Councilman Carlson.
Is it
but
scheduled, or?
No, what happened was
Okay.
that they wouldn't know, the administration indicated to me that they wouldn't know until such time as it's roughly time to begin to present on the budget, so it would kind of conflict. If you want to make a motion to follow up on that, that's great. I mean, that's $81 million that we're going to be getting, and there's so many needs that we have. But what I was told is that when they finally get an answer, it'll sort of conflict with the presentation of the budget. So if you want to follow up or whatever, I mean, I'm totally in agreement with you, so.
Mr.
What do you
Vieira,
all-
there was a discussion with Mr. O'Hara I had yesterday. Mr. Shelby, you remember that conversation? We talked about those funds.
With Mr. O'Hara?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
We did talk about those funds, and he's going to eventually make a presentation that breaks that down, because some funds, right now, they haven't defined how those funds could really be used yet, per se, and it may be an opportunity for those funds to be used in some areas that we do necessarily need within the city in the general fund.
What do you all think about trying to schedule a separate discussion on June 24th? Is the agenda too busy on that date?
It might be too early for him, but I just had that discussion with him, so that, I don't know if he'll have all that information as of yet.
I just think we need to hear from the public. You know, I'm getting lots of complaints about park benches with splinters in them, potholes, and I think it's important to listen to the public, because they're not asking us for boathouses or anything like that. They're asking us for basic infrastructure to be repaired.
I don't have a problem. What I'm saying is, I mean, just speaking with him.
But when do you think?
Ready. I would say maybe July, but because I know he just said he wouldn't have that total information on how it's going to work.
How about July 15th? Staff report on July 15th?
Yeah, that's fine.
That'll work.
So I'd like to make a motion that we have CFO's office present during staff reports on July 15th on the American Rescue Plan budget and any proposals to spend it, and then also that we hear from the public on that day about their ideas on how to spend it.
Mr. Shelby, you recognize.
Yes, thank you, sir. Two questions then. Well, the first actually being, when you say hear from the public, that would be during general public comment, because this would be under staff report on the 15th. Is that correct?
Unless there's another format to set it to hear public feedback separately.
Well, that would be a question of council. It would be logistically different for the clerk's office to prepare for that. And the other point, I think, which ties into this, is after hearing what Chairman Goods heard yesterday from the CFO, I think, in my opinion, it would be equally important, if not more so, for the public to understand what is attached to that and the process and what it can and cannot be used
Correct.
for, before they make, a judgment, before they bring that to council, because there were things in there that were new to me.
When does the budget have to be done? It looks like the next workshop after June is September, is that right?
Summer.
If I may, when does the mayor usually present the budget, Councilman Miranda?
In July, I believe.
That's the, and that's what I was told when I brought that up, which is, look, by the time we have an answer, it's going to be time to present the budget. I mean, I'll tell you my preference. I mean, look, we have a lot of great ideas for that money. Among my ideas is a fire station for North Tampa, help for New Tampa, a fire station for Channelside, and more help for West Tampa with their growing areas for fire safety, among many
Mr.
other
Carlson,
things.
let's see if Mr. Harrell can bring us something back by the 15th. How about that? Work for you,
Okay,
sir?
So just if I would like to make a motion that we asked the CFO on July 15th to present a staff report, how much money the city will be getting from the American Rescue Plan and what the criteria is for how it can be spent.
Got a motion for Mr. Costa. I know the second came from Mr. Miranda already. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Dingfelder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we talk about neighborhoods a lot. We have some great community and neighborhood leaders who we hear from regularly. And I was thinking back a ways. I think most or some of you know Margaret Vesey. Margaret Vesey was still is one of the top neighborhood leaders in our community. And I believe she was one of the original founders of THAN. THAN in the last couple of years kind of went on the downturn a little bit, but now it's coming back up. And there's some new blood revitalizing THAN. So I've been thinking about this for a couple months, but we honor our own workers. We honor the firemen and the police and ATU, and they're all well deserving. But I was thinking, and the county already does this, that we should have a Neighborhood Leader of the Year award and recognition given by this body, and that we should call it the Margaret Vesey Neighborhood Leader of the Year Award, unless somebody else has another idea, and I'm totally open to it.
I'm totally supportive of that. Margaret Vesey, I've
in your district.
Yep, in Beach Park, and I've known her for a while. And when I was involved with THAN, before I got elected, Steve Labor was there, and Jerry Frankhauser. A lot of people had passed away, and for a time, I remember going to a meeting where they didn't know what to do. They really didn't have a social media presence. A couple of people said, "Yeah, we'll help you." And I said, "This is a dying or dead group," but as you've already mentioned, it's being revitalized. New blood and keeping it going again because it's very important. And so I'm supportive.
And this wouldn't necessarily be a vehicle of THAN. I just mentioned THAN because that's where Ms. Vesey was the strongest. But we could figure out, some way to how we evaluate, and maybe Murray, thank you. Maybe Murray can help us with some nominations or some ideas on who that neighborhood leader might be, and we should definitely try and spread it around the city, so it's not always coming out of a particular area. Or maybe there should be 4, one for each district. So anyway, I toss it out to you guys, and see what you think about it, and we can bring it back after pondering it.
So the motion on the floor, you're looking at possibly Murray Holmes coming back with some ideas or policies to come up with a neighborhood award for the 4 districts.
I think that'd be great, and I like the idea of one for each district. We'll spread it around, so every year each district, one from each district gets a nod and a little recognition. So
Second.
Motion on the floor, Mr. Dingfelder, second by Ms. Maniscalco.
we'll give her a little time to ponder it.
July 15th or later on?
Say again?
There's July 15th, which is the city of Tampa's birthday, let's not forget.
That sounds appropriate.
All right.
July 15th. Is that a regular meeting?
Yes, sir.
Staff report.
Yep.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Dingfelder, second by Mr. Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Council.
Mr. Miranda.
Yes, sir. I'm going to try to make you all stay here to 6 so we
Yes,
can
sir.
don't have
Yes,
to
sir.
Thank you.
rush in the streets.
Kind of like
and get
Louise
run
down there, yeah.
I have 2, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion for the Mayor's Hispanic Committee to attend our City Council meeting August the 26th, 2021, at which time they will be inviting City Council members to attend the 33rd Annual Hispanic Heritage Award on September 28th, the year 2021.
Motion by Mr. Miranda, second by Mr. Dingfelder. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Second, as we know, all of us know, the City of Tampa is a member of Tampa Bay Water, one of 9. Tampa Bay Water is in the process of investigating or incorporating possibly reclaimed water into their process of long-term water use. City of Tampa's reclaimed water has a lot of reclaimed water, and the potential projects which could greatly involve the region. And I'm asking Tampa Bay Water and the city, we should meet before we do any further projects, planning on this subject matter, and I'm asking this council to have a motion sent to Tampa Bay Water and to the mayor to encourage Tampa Bay Water to meet with the city staff now to identify the operation benefits and clarity on any of the other projects that the city of Tampa may have for reclaimed water projects of the city. That way everybody has clear transparency of one side doing what the other side wants.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Miranda, second by Mr. Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlemen, I'm going to be a little candid with what I want to say. Last week, we had a heated discussion about the CRB. On our end, we were heated. The administration was heated as well. But some things were said in the public eye that me as the chairman, I did not agree with, but I did not come out publicly to say anything about it that particular day, because a lot of times when we're heated, we say things we don't mean or things that shouldn't be said. That being said, I felt for this council, a lot of folks were upset about the press conference that was made by the chief and the mayor. There were some comments that were made that I thought that were kind of unfair to this council. But again, when things are heated, when emotions are high, things are said. I don't believe that the intent of the mayor was to say some of the comments that were said as it relates to this council. This council does work hard for the public. We hear the complaints of the people. Unfortunately, the mayor doesn't hear those type of complaints up front and personal like we hear them. I'm sure she does hear them, but not in the magnitude that we hear them. So again, I want to apologize to the administration for my colleagues if we felt that we were in any way out of line. But I think that a lot of things were said, and a lot of what I call the ball was dropped. And I'm not going to say the ball was dropped on our end, because we only can get what the administration sends to us. We only can respond to what we have. And in that sequence of events last week, we got the ball dropped on us in the ninth hour in reference to some things that the administration was looking forward to. As you know, there was a vote of 6-1 back in February. It was 7-4. At that time, we did not get any notice that the mayor was not going to uphold what we thought was a good plan. We had a good ordinance. And all of a sudden, we got, last week, Monday, phone calls to council members in reference to that situation. As the leader, I thought about it and reflected over the weekend that maybe I should not have let that walk-on come on. Maybe I should have waited, and that been a separate motion, because actually that wasn't on the agenda item. The public didn't have a chance to weigh in on it. My city attorney asked for a continuance, and again, my gut feeling is that we want to work with the administration. We truly do. But we're in a double-edged sword, again, where we have to deal with the public opinion, other different groups, the administration, the union. But we have to make a decision. I felt last week we were in a situation that was jabbed at us, and we made a decision. We also kicked some things down the road. We said it was not a part of that ordinance. We made that clear. This is not a part. We want to do what we got to do to make it right, and a decision was forced upon us to make. Webster defines a leader, a person who leads, something that ranks first, a person who has commanding authority or influence. At this particular point, I'm the leader, and Mayor Castro is the leader of the administration. And you talk about leadership, the action of leading a group of people or an organization. I've always said we have two houses. We have an administrative house, and we've got a legislative house. And sometimes we don't agree all the time, but we can agree to disagree. We can come back and make compromises for the citizens of this city. I don't know what's going to happen on the 17th. The mayor has made some statements on how she's going to proceed right now. But I'd like to have a conversation with the mayor. I think that's needed to clear the air. I wish John Bennett would have been a part of this process. I think a lot of us believe in his leadership and have always thought he'd been loyal and been up front with us. I don't think anybody would agree with that. And for some reason, he was left out of this equation. I don't know what happened or why. But I'm going to ask that this body allow me to meet with the mayor, John Bennett, Mr. Shelby, and Ms. Grimes, and we try to hash this thing out for the community's sake. I think that's the best solution. I don't want to come back on the 17th with no solution, and we wind up with a vote like was before, and now we go down to some legal challenges. That's not good for the city. We got housing issues going on, fire engines that need to be bought, firehouses that need to be bought, and for this council to spend umptums of dollars of a legal challenge, you know, because the administration will need an attorney, because the city attorney, I mean, to me, you can't use that person because the administration is fighting against us, and the city attorney works for both of us. So we would have to have outside counsel. That would cost us money. And it does us no good to see the citizens see us fight and not get along. I don't like a divided house, but there are two houses, but we have to get along. So I'm going to ask that, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote in this matter. If I'll pass the gavel to Mr. Dingfelder, that I be allowed to talk with the administration to look at some ideas and ways that we can make some compromises to better this relationship and to better the situation with the CRB as we go forward. Mr. Maniscalco, I saw your hand. You're recognized.
Yes, sir. First, I just want to say I commend you for your leadership. I support what you're saying. You know, I've always believed in extending the olive branch. Two quotes come to mind. One is Hemingway, where it's courage is grace under pressure, and I think you know how to handle that. And another one is by Bukowski, which says, "What matters most is how well you walk through the fire." And I'm glad that you're in the position now as chair. And I believe in your leadership, and I know that you know how to communicate, and I hope it goes well. And I think talking can resolve a lot of things, and you're taking that step, so I commend you on that, sir.
Ms. Vera, I saw your hand. You're recognized.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate as well your leadership. I think that one of the big missing things in politics today, by and large, is the art of bridge building, the art of bringing people together, especially when people are relatively close. In terms of their positions. I thank you for volunteering yourself to do that, because a lot of times that's a very thankless job, especially in today's political arena, as I think we all know all too well. Bridge building is very important. I was not happy with the way things ended at council in terms of the fact that we were so close and yet so far away with legal issues that I can talk about in just a little bit. But, this is a very important and sensitive issue. I think we all agree on that. And we also agree that important and sensitive issues should be done the right and proper way. And I think you're leading in that regard. I think that following your discussions, Councilman or Chairman Goods, because I believe in your leadership, I believe in your sincerity on this issue and so many others, we're going to get a 7-0 vote. I believe, and we're going to get support from the executive, and we may get something where compromises are made. But the truth is as our friend Councilman Dingfelder said, we agree on 99% of stuff. It's that 1% that's a poison pill. That's what, and I don't even want to call it a poison pill. An issue in dispute. That's what's so troubling about the whole thing. I don't think the main issue is council appointments. The principle of city council, in my opinion, having a majority of the appointments is not in dispute. I don't believe that's in dispute, right? It's how we go about that in that regard. There's other issues, and I've made my opinions known, and for example, having an outside attorney supporting that, but I think that's outside of this basic issue. But on this important and sensitive issue, I support your lead in trying to build this in a further collaborative way. Particularly with miscommunications. And I think that's what this really is about, is miscommunications. I think that's really, really important. This deals with issues that I feel very, very passionately about, whether it's issues involving first responders, right? Or whether it's issues involving civil rights and human rights and government accountability. And I think that in the end, we can get an ordinance that can pass 7-0. And in fact, I know on my end, I'll fight for that, because I think if it's something that doesn't get that, I'll take that as a failure on my end, quite frankly. This is a good ordinance. I've been proud to contribute a lot of things to it, including on ideas like having the CRB report to City Council, having council involvement with the CRB, including attendance, et cetera, et cetera. And I think your leadership in that regards is really, really good. So I just wanted to salute you for that, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carlson, then we'll go with Mr. Miranda.
Thank you for bringing this up, and congrats on the eloquent way you said that, and I appreciate you bringing this up. You mentioned, I won't get too into the weeds, but you mentioned you found out Monday last week. I found out on Thursday. Thursday was the first I knew that the mayor was against. I was told on Wednesday night that I had a briefing on Wednesday night, and it didn't include that the mayor was not in favor of it. And I also was not aware until Thursday about the charter challenges. So if all of you were briefed, then I guess I was the only one not. But I felt blindsided. And I did have a conversation with Chief Bennett last night, who I agree with you has been a great broker. I'm getting to know Marley. I'm supposed to meet with her again tomorrow. And so look forward to having those conversations. But my issue about last week was being blindsided and also being threatened with charter challenges. I thought that months ago we had asked the attorneys, our attorneys in the cities, to work together on it. And I think that can be worked out by the lawyers. It doesn't have to be played out in the public. And I think we saw this morning, we had a conversation about toilet to tap, which I'm absolutely against. And other times when I felt like the presentation was biased, I got emotional about it. Today, I was perfectly fine because I felt like it was an objective presentation. And the reason why I get emotional is because I think the public has the right to and deserves to have the truth laid out. And if we know the truth and we have transparency in our conversations, then we can be honest and truthful and transparent with the public. I think there were some red herrings that were thrown up in the press conference later in the day, and without getting into the details of it, I think there's plenty of room there to find some kind of great solution, and I look forward to walking into that meeting. I'll say this last thing. I told everybody I thought I was walking in on Thursday morning last week to approve it and walk away. I had no idea that we were going to have a big conversation like that. So I pray for you and the city staff that we can accomplish that, because the community, and it sounds like especially the police department, would like resolution on this. Thank you.
I will have a conversation with the mayor in reference to how we get these things in the ninth hour. I know some things are an exception. When things happen in the city, we have to do some things, but we find out some of these things are throwing us to the last minute, and we're forced into decisions that we really should be thinking about and the public should be notified about. So I will discuss that with the mayor, because I think all the council members are feeling that kind of way. And again, I don't know this new process we have, but I know that Mr. Bennett was a guy who was briefing us way ahead of time on some of these issues. It seems like something has changed, and I want to get back to the way Mr. Bennett was doing things and that way of business. Mr. Miranda, you're recognized.
Chairman, thank you very much for your leadership, but my feeling is you don't have to have the council's permission to go meet with the mayor and try to iron things out. I really don't. I don't think that's, you're the chairman and you're the one that you see something you don't like, you go work it out with the administration, come back. If you want the support, we'll give the support, but I don't think that's needed. You're the chairperson of this council, you're the leader, it's your turn at bat, and you want to go see them, and they want to meet with you, that's fine. I don't see anything derogatory where you have to have 7 members or 6 members. You might vote against yourself. And,
you're correct, sir. You're correct, but I do things in order. And I want the council to know what my intent is going in to speak with the administration, because I don't want this kind of chaos on this body, frustrating on the city.
You're right.
Folks think. So I just want to make sure that this body knows what I plan to do. Mr. Shelby, let me get Mr. Dingfelder, then I'll recognize you, sir.
It relates to what Mr. Miranda said, and I think it's a very relevant point with regard to council, and I don't want to complicate matters, which sometimes happens. By you being delegated something to do by city council, it may create a sunshine issue. It may create something of a legal complication that, the way Mr. Miranda suggests, if it's by consensus of council without a formal vote of council and you have the direction and you have informed council, I can certainly double check that legally and get back to you this evening if you feel that's necessary. But if you're willing to accept the consensus of council or of council.
I'm going to still ask for a roll call vote that we have on the record, that everyone's satisfied and knowing that I'm going to go and see the mayor.
Understood, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have to take off for a 4 o'clock appointment, so if you want to vote, let's vote.
Mr. Dingfelder?
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Just a couple of words. I'm not going to rehash the last year, because that's what it is. But we were sort of ridiculed about that it took a year. But if you look at a lot of legislation in Washington and Tallahassee, legislation, especially important legislation, often takes several years in Tallahassee and Washington. So this was a very important piece of legislation. The fact that it took a year, so be it. One thing Luis Vieira said last week stuck in my head, and I think you mentioned it, Mr. Chairman, has to do with escalation. And this thing has just gotten escalated way out of control. And now we had a mayor at a press conference who's basically insinuating that even if we adopted that ordinance, she's going to ignore it. We might have escalated it perhaps in their eyes, and then they're escalating it even further. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to support you 100% to go try and de-escalate this. But we're going to de-escalate it with dialogue. That's super important. But the one thing that I think that we all feel real strongly about, and I'm sorry Mr. Citro is not here because he feels strongly as well, because I've heard him say it, is the clause in the charter that says we are the exclusive legislative body. The mayor can send us ideas, she can send us proposed legislation all day long, and they do. But at the end of the day, once they throw that lateral back to us, it's our ball to run with, Mr. Chairman. And that is a province that we cannot give up in any context whatsoever. And whether or not it's a police issue or a sewer issue or whatever issue it is, okay, I totally disagree with the notion that just because it happens to do with some particular branch of government that all of a sudden it's off limits and that we have to legislate cooperatively, okay, with another branch of government. That is not the way that the government works in this country. And it's not the way that charter reads. Not the way I read it. And I've practiced law as long as anybody upstairs. So I know I sound a little riled up, but that is a critical issue that I think we all have to stand together, okay? Because it's not standing together for us. It's not standing together for power trip or anything like that. It's standing together because that's the separation of powers. That's what people expect of government. They expect that this is where the legislative activity happens, and over there is where the administrative part happens, and they carry out our legislation. So anyway, I'm thrilled you're going to do this, Mr. Chairman. I will go with it either way, whether or not you want to vote or you don't want to vote. You have my support either way, and I'll carry the motion. If you have a motion on the floor, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I'd like to ask this council permission to go talk with the mayor and represent some concerns and issues surrounding some charter issues and these in the CRB. We need to talk about those things and hopefully come back to this council with some information and a resolution to moving forward.
Okay, and you'll come back at a time when you deem appropriate.
Correct.
All right, we have a motion from our chairman as Chair Pro Tem. Second is where? Mr. Maniscalco. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? No.
Yeah, roll call. Yeah, we need a roll call. Let's do a roll call.
Vieira,
Yes.
Maniscalco. Carlson.
Yes.
Citro. Miranda.
Yes.
Dingfelder.
Yes.
Goods. Motion carried unanimously with Councilmember Citro being absent at vote.
Second. No, receiving file, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unopposed? We're adjourned.
6 o'clock, Mr. Chairman.
6 o'clock, yes, sir.